Hello, my name is Sidney and welcome to my Publishing 100 series. This is Publishing 105. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to overcome your fears. I'm going to talk mainly about the three kinds of fears that you need to overcome. But what I need you to do now is to grab something you can write in, relax, settle down, and I'll see you on the inside. The first fear I'm going to talk about today is the fear of being criticized. A lot of would-be authors or people who aspire to become writers or who aspire to make a career or a living out of writing many times have a fear of criticism. Now, I'm going to look at the definition of criticism and then we're going to I'm going to attempt to really break this down. Now, I'm looking at my Google dictionary. It says criticism, the expression of disapproval of someone or something on the basis of perceived faults or mistakes. Let me repeat that. The expression of disapproval of someone or something on the basis of perceived faults or mistakes. That's what it means. That's what criticism means. Now, if you want to write a book, if you really are serious about writing or publishing your book, you need to get over that fear because there's an acronym for FEAR, F.E.A.R, false evidence appearing real. Okay, because you are afraid of being criticized does not mean you should not write or you should not have a dream or a goal of writing. Let me tell you something about life. If you are dead, you will be criticized. Okay. If you are alive now to do something, you still will be criticized, as morbid as that sounds. So one of the things you should really, really get rid of is that fear of criticism. Don't be afraid that someone is going to, say something about not liking your book or not liking the style of, what you're writing. Criticism is not bad. It depends on how you take it. It might be criticism to me is like feedback. I've been criticized over and over again. Some of my closest friends or some of even, my family members might criticize me. But something, I take it on board. If I see that it's constructive, I take it on board and do something about it. But if it's destructive or if it's not really creative or productive, well, I just throw that aside and I take it as an opinion from them. So don't be afraid of being criticized. You need to get over that fear. It's a fear of a perceived fault or mistakes. So don't worry about people saying negative things about what you want to do. I remember the first time I wanted to write a book many years ago. I think that was early or mid 90s or something like that. The first time I wanted to write a book, I remember I asked someone, I asked an opinion of from that person. I said, well, what do you think? He said, well, why do you want to write a book? Why don't you get popular first? That when you get popular, it's easier for you, to write a book, or that's the best time for you to write a book. But well, in the first place, I asked of his opinion. I asked, what did he think? And he gave me his opinion. But guess what? I didn't take that opinion, and it was all right because a lot of people think that unless they are famous, they don't need to write a book. But thank God that I actually looked at that not as just as what it is, an opinion, and I've gone on to write my first book, and today I've written 6 books. I'm on the seventh, planning to write my 7th book. So don't be afraid of criticism. Don't be afraid that people will talk about your faults or things that you can't do well. Don't be afraid that people will think that, okay, fine. Why do you really want to write a book? Who do you think you are? So don't be afraid of that, because that is always going to happen in life. When you're progressing in life, when you're moving forward, people will say things about you. People will say things about what you want to do, or what you cannot do, or what they feel you should, or what they feel that you should do anyway. But guess what? The same people who criticized you, when they see that you are succeeding, when they see that you are actually serious and you've done something about your goals and it seems that you are succeeding, the same people who criticize you will come back and come and commend you. So let me tell you something about criticism. Put that criticism aside. Get over your fears. Like I said, fear is, false evidence appearing real. Get over that and start doing something about getting your book written and published. The second fear I'm going to talk about today is the fear of rejection. Very interesting. Let me look at the meaning of rejection. Now, rejection is the dismissing or refusing of a proposal, idea, and so on. Now, let me tell you something that happened to me when I started in publishing over 20 years ago. I used to work as an assistant editor in a big legacy publishing firm, very well established. And one of the things that I used to see on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, were unsolicited manuscripts from authors who, would send their books in a hope of being accepted, their work or, their story, being accepted and then being accepted to get published. And then, authors have dreams and I am an author myself, and it's one of the great dreams of an author to get published. But guess what? Many of those manuscripts were rejected. But did that mean that the manuscripts were not good enough? No. What it meant was that obviously the publisher, the publishing house was not ready to take on the risk of publishing someone who is an unknown entity. And so as such, a lot of those manuscripts, as good as some of them were, not all of them were really good, as good as some of them they were rejected, not because they were not good enough, but because that was not in the strategy of the publishing house at the time. And so a lot of authors received a lot of rejection letters. I mean, that must have been so demeaning or so, depressing when those authors received those letters of rejection. And let me tell you, any author worth his salt, go and Google it, any author worth his salt would have been rejected many times. And let me tell you, some of those great authors that you see out there were rejected, but they found a way to deal with their rejection. They found a way to get their book published. Some of them, their books were published, and maybe it was just before, they gave up, just before, that was just the last letter they wrote or the last manuscript they sent to a publishing house that was accepted, and maybe that was the publisher that later will be so lucky to get that author, and then that book will become a bestseller. I mean, that's not the story of every author. But what am I saying? Rejection is a part of the process. Rejection is a part of your learning curve. Learn to deal with it. Don't be afraid of rejection. You can find a way around issues. You can find a way around problems. So it's just a fear. So go ahead, plan your book, write your book. Don't worry whether it's going to be accepted or not. Some of the ideas that were not accepted years ago are the same ideas that are being accepted now. So if you've got a dream, if you've got a goal of writing and publishing your book, go ahead and start doing something about it. But don't let fear stop you from achieving what you want to achieve. Don't let fear stop you, because if it stops you, how would we know if you know the greatness that is within you? How will the world feed from your writings? How will the world feed from your ideas? How do you know that thing that you're writing about will not change the world, will not touch millions and thousands of people around the world, and will not, cause new ideas to be birthed in the hearts of other people? So don't let the fear of rejection stop you from writing your book. So plan your book and get to work, and stop letting rejection stop you. Now, the last kind of fear I'm going to talk about today is the fear that you are not good enough. It's the fear of impostor syndrome. Let me tell you something that happened to me yesterday. I was interviewing a young lady in one of the top universities in the world, and I saw that she had a passion for writing and publishing. An undergraduate of English. So it's holiday time now in the United Kingdom, and I said, okay, fine. Why don't we get somebody in who is interested in publishing so they can learn something? I mean, they can be mentored and trained, and that will go a long way in helping them, in their dream of becoming, publishers or working in publishing. And so she told me that one of the things she had to deal with was because was impostor syndrome. That was one of the top universities in the world, the top 5 universities in the world, and she had to deal, because she's from an ethnic minority, she had to deal with impostor syndrome. And guess what? As time progressed in her first year, she found other people with those kinds of issues, and they came to the conclusion that they being at that university was as valid as anybody else, that they were as good enough as anybody else. And so one of the things that you need to get over is that voice in your head. You would have heard me say this several times. It's that imposter syndrome. Are you good enough? Do you think anybody wants to listen to you? I mean, you will need to get over that and really begin to do something about that. And guess what? There is so much help around. There is so much information around. You can find so much information that you can do anything you want to do. But don't let the fear that you think you're not good enough stop you from writing your book. Fear, all of this, the fear of let me go back, the 3 fears, which is the fear of being criticized, the fear of rejection, the fear of not being good enough. These are all fears. Guess what? They are unfounded. They are perceptions that you have in your head. But really, it doesn't even matter if you don't know how to even write the English language properly. If you put down your ideas and you begin to write about what you're really passionate about, you will find an editor who can help you. And guess what? There are many ways of writing. You don't even have to write on a computer. You don't even have to, write longhand, with pen and paper. You can actually even dictate your book. And guess what? Somebody out there, a very good editor out there, will be able to make sense about what you want to write and come back to you and give you some feedback and tell you what you need to do. So do you see that? Many times what you think, what you fear will happen, most times will not happen. It's just that perception in your head. So, that imposter syndrome, the fear that you're not good enough, don't let that put you down. I know that you've gotten some nuggets from this session. Let me go over that again. 3 kinds of fear. Well, number 1, the fear of being criticized, the fear of being rejected. That's the fear of rejection. And number 3, the fear that you are not good enough. Let me go over that again. The fear of being criticized, don't be afraid of criticism. The fear of rejection, don't be afraid of rejection. And number 3, the fear that you are not good enough. I'm sure you've gotten so much from this section, and I really want you to press on towards your goal of becoming an author. Welcome back. I know you got some real nuggets from this Publishing 100 series. This is the last series, Publishing 105. Now, if you need to get in touch with me, don't forget you can email me at consultant@publishingbrain.com. That's consultant@publishingbrain.com. This podcast is going to be regular, and in subsequent podcasts, the next podcast, I will expand more, but I'm going to go really deep. I'm going to go really deep into publishing, but in some podcasts as well, I'm going to bring on some guests that you can learn from, that you will gain from their experience. But till then, see you on the inside.